recording here because I know that there's some folks that will be joining us a little bit later, and then also who unfortunately can't be with us today, but will be looking to access this at a future time. So again, thank you ladies for joining us. I know we'll have a few more participants here shortly. Dustin, welcome from Fairfield. So my name is Crystal Smith. I am the program manager for Advanced Opportunities and Transformational Learning. And I am thrilled to have three folks out of the educational leadership field for Montana, Superintendent Jarrett, Superintendent Gordon, and we'll have Bo Brisma, who is the career coordinator outreach from Billings, joining us a little bit later. So as I work with districts, I hear often, what are other school districts doing? And so part of being able to answer that question is to have these three folks who are so graciously willing to join us and share what's going on in their districts and their journey, their successes, their vision as we work towards that today. So thank you, you three, for joining us. A couple goals that I have for us today is to become familiar with both bill requirements. I know we have some folks on here and who'll be accessing this later who have just recently applied for advanced opportunity or transformational learning funding. We also have some folks who've already been funded. So again, there's some requirements of both bills that, as I present to the Ed Interim Committee, excuse me, that they're interested in making sure that those caveats are met. So we're responsible for reminding our participants of those requirements and then updating an update on the funding as well. Second goal today is to identify some key components of future schools that I would like to share with you, discussing some models from other districts, as I mentioned, with our folks who are here to join us from around the state. And then if you have a personal goal, I would like for you to enter that in the chat because I would like to make sure that as I have some goals, this is also personalized to your needs and requirements. So if you have a goal from this webinar today, please go ahead and put that in the chat and we will review those as we finish and make sure that those are addressed. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. It's been a few months since I've presented via Zoom, so let's make sure I still remember how to do this. Hopefully you should be able to see my my slide deck here. So I want us to begin today with thinking about your why. As I've read and listened to lectures and been a part of groups around the nation about how to transform learning and better understand the needs of our students, this concept of what is your why seems to be the first question that's always asked. And it's been said that if you know your why, the what comes easy, or at least easier. So when you think about your why are you here today? Why has your district opted to be funded for transformational learning and or advanced Montana Advanced Opportunity funding? Why did you choose the career that you currently have? And maybe as equally as important, why do we do school? I know I've had this conversation with several folks around the state and around the nation, especially around the pandemic. You know, why do we do school, as we have so many people with ideas of remote learning, blended learning, in-person learning, and weighing those risks and benefits of all of those. What's the ultimate purpose of why do we do school and why do we have school? So as you think about that, I want to share a couple of video clips here. The first one is called The Adaptable Mind, and this is just a trailer of about an 11-minute film, but it poses a pretty important question at the end. So hopefully you can see my desktop here, and hopefully you can hear it as well.
What's a great example of a 21st century mind in action?
I heard about a 25-year-old woman inventing wireless chargers.
Scientist was born in Ethiopia that was using satellites to predict drought.
I really like that story about the car mechanic who developed the wheels.
Our question prompted all these responses about amazing technological breakthroughs and innovations. And then we heard one story that opened a door to a new way of thinking. It's about an art professor in Los Angeles named Mary Beth, who was watching the news around the Ebola crisis in West Africa and thought, wait a second, these patients must be so scared and lonely, and the only humans they're seeing are covered in these huge imposing suits.
In every report that I heard on the Ebola epidemic, they mentioned the frightening suits.
I imagine, what would it be like to be a patient to not see a person's face for days on end? I found myself almost saying out loud, why don't they put photos on the outside? Why don't they just put photos on?
And finally, I thought, maybe I'm the one who's meant to do that.
And we were so moved because the way Mary Beth's story unfolds shines a light on a larger shift we're seeing in the world. As technologies are rapidly changing how we do everything, certain skills are becoming less valuable, the need to memorize, perform routine tasks, and soon even the need to drive, while others are becoming more valuable. So what exactly are the skills that prepare us for a world that's constantly changing?
So I'm going to pose that question that the short film ends with. What are those skills that are necessary to prepare us for a world that is constantly changing? And if you would be willing to put your response or responses, you can pick your number one, or if there's a couple of those skills that you'd be willing to share, go ahead and put those in the chat box. And as you do that, I want to share with you a brief history of my professional career. So in first grade, I loved my teacher so much that I knew that I was going to be, or I wanted to be, an elementary teacher. I went to the University of Montana, got my my bachelor's degree in elementary education, and I went and taught for 10 years. And as I got to about that 9th or 10th year of teaching, I thought, you know what? I would actually really like to be a college coach. I had coached some national or some state championship teams in Nevada, won a couple state championships and with my team, and thought I need to change my path. And that, if you would have asked me but before those last couple of years, that would have never been a thought of mine. So I grew my network, my coaching network, and in this idea to try something else, I took a huge leap of faith, and I had the opportunity to come back to Montana and be a college women's basketball coach and assistant coach for 5 years. And during that time, I had the opportunity to continue to strengthen my educational ties, both at the district that I worked for back in Nevada and with some schools around the state of Montana. But at that time, I was going to be a basketball coach for the rest of my life. And then I had a child and realized that it's challenging to be on the road every weekend and in the gym every evening with a young child. And opportunity for this career came about. And so I thought, I will take another leap of faith, and I will see what this career has in store for me. So as I think about my journey over the last 15 to 16 years of my professional career, I would have never thought that I'd be sitting in this role today. And I wonder about the skills that I needed in order to adapt and to change, even though it was never in my intentions to adapt or to change my career. So as we teach our students, as we spend time with them in our classes, my question for you are, what skills are we sharing or are we teaching them to allow them to be able to be flexible, to adapt, to succeed and thrive in this world that's ever changing? So as I see some of our responses, let's see. the skill to adapt, to be flexible to change, right? As I shared in my story. And I think if you look at your own professional career, you've probably had to exhibit and use those skills several times, no matter where you are right now. The skill to constantly ask how, right? How can I accomplish X, Y, and Z, and how can we solve this problem? Thank you, Heather, for sharing that. Dustin says an effort to better connect and prepare all students, right? We're implementing a versatile apprenticeship program, and I think Dustin's going to spend some time sharing that with us. But yeah, how do the skills for teaching all students, and I think that might go back to Dustin's goal, but what are these skills, right? We often hear them as soft skills, we hear them called hard skills, and as we work further today, we'll learn a little bit more about those skills and how can we be able to teach them in our classrooms intentionally. The next video I have for us, let me see if I can get rid of my chat here, is talking about essential skills.
For all of human history, the primary focus of education has been acquiring more content knowledge. And the only way to get it is through the teacher, right? You don't have to do that anymore. Today, content is ubiquitous. It's free. It's on every internet connected device. And it's growing exponentially and changing constantly. The world simply no longer cares how much our kids know. What the world cares about is what they can do with what they know, which is a completely different education problem.
When we were growing up, parents and teachers talked about work ethic, that you really had to want to work hard. But it turns out in the 21st century, work ethic isn't good enough. You can't just intend to work hard. You actually have to know what to do next yourself. You have to be motivated and you have to have knowledge about what is the next step I ought to be taking.
If we can compete with other countries, it's got to be in producing citizens capable of innovative thinking, not citizens capable of industrial production, not citizens capable of assembling iPads. We're going to lose if that's what we think we're producing. The old blue-collar industrial model of education is already gone. We're already living in its wake.
So what is everyone looking for? They're looking for people who can do critical thinking and problem solving. ... in order to keep an engine. Critical thinking and problem solving are really table stakes today. They assume you've got that. What everyone's really looking for are people who can not only do their job, but invent, reinvent, and re-engineer their job while they're doing it.
A recent study by the RAND Corporation found out that among the state tests that are used for accountability, only about 2% of the items on the math tests measure higher order thinking skills. 98% of the items are, can you apply an algorithm and do the procedure? The problem with that is that quite often people who can identify a particular problem format and crank out an answer or find and guess an answer from a list of 5, which schools spend a lot of time on, cannot reason their way through a mathematical application in the real world.
We have to prepare students to be resilient, to be thinkers, to be collaborators, to be communicators. We have to prepare them in such a different way.
I think there's a sharp trade-off between what can be tested easily on a large scale and what's important in life. Think of a different universe where you're asking kids to invent a science experiment, write a creative essay, come up with an interesting historical perspective on an event they care about. Far more important challenges for a kid, far more aligned with what they need to do in the real world when they graduate, much harder to test and very hard to say, you got a 731 on this experiment, somebody else got a 627 on the experiment. So that's the existential trade-off we face in education.
Creativity cannot be taught, but it can be cured. Because to me, creativity and entrepreneurship and in the spirit to innovate, they all are human nature. We can enhance it, we can make it better, but more importantly, a lot of times we're discouraged by forcing people to do what other people think is right, to force people to find answers, not ask questions, to force people to shoot for answers very efficiently, not asking to explore.
There's some really big questions here is what should we be teaching? You know, who are our major stakeholders? So getting that consensus among all of the players, the parents, the teachers, the business community, the politicians, this is what we want our end product to look like. This is what we want the students coming out prepared to do, not just to know. Until you get that aligned, getting tough doesn't matter, because you're getting tough on what?
I would argue that beyond the morality of this issue, it's simply a matter of self-interest for all of us. Because if we don't train and teach and really support children from all these backgrounds, they become our responsibility or our fear, source of our fear. Because we have to teach them about what we consider most important in our society. This is not about something that would be nice to do. This is about the very essence of our future. This is about who we become as a nation.
So I would like to encourage you to unmute if you're so inclined, and share your thoughts about either the first video or the second video. As you're doing that, I think Thomas Friedman solidified what Superintendent Jarrett's point was about being able to teach students to be problem solvers, and being able to have flexibility, right? Two key points to what we need to be able to teach children. And then also, I also want to give a little shout out while you're framing your comments that I don't know if you noticed Yang Zhao, who was about in the middle of that film. He actually came to Belgrade and spent 2 days with the Montana executive leadership cohort that is currently going on. So just an idea of the level of thought provokers and excellence that's being offered through that academy, and there will be other opportunities, as I know that cohort is looking for their second and third cohorts coming up in the years to come. So if you would like to unmute, would you go ahead and share your thoughts from either of those videos?
I guess I'll say one thought that resonated with me was when he was talking about how the real world practical applications are really difficult to test in the common assessment type that we are accustomed to.
Yes, Cindy, thank you for sharing that. And I know as I meet with Deputy Superintendent Allen quite frequently about this, that the OPI and some different task force are really working to see how we can provide greater flexibilities and maybe gear more towards students being able to present and perform and use some benchmark data to show mastery and growth versus a standardized testing. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
I love the question that was posed of what can you do with what you know? I think that's a huge question that we don't always think about as educators, and we probably don't ask our kids often enough. What can you do with the knowledge that you're learning? What can you do with what you know? I love that question. It's kind of a great jumping off place for a really good discussion with our students.
Yeah, Heather, thanks for sharing that. And I think that levels the playing field somewhat with our students, right? We know that we have students coming into our schools and our classrooms with a variety of different background experiences. And even though they may not be on standard or on grade level, they have all these ideas and things that they do know, right? So being able to give them the freedom and the flexibility to creatively demonstrate what they know or what they can do with what they know, I think is vital. Thank you. So I'm going to quickly share this last video. Again, it's just a snippet of a much longer video that's titled Most Likely to Succeed. Some of you may have seen this, as it's a Ted Dintersmith compilation of how change occurred in a school district.
We divide the day up in high schools into bits of time, into 40 or 50-minute blocks typically, and then we ring bells and people start to shuffle around the building and do something else. That's an organizational device. It's not an educational principle.
10 university heads in 1890 said, in 11th grade, everyone should learn chemistry. In senior year, everyone should learn physics. A lot of these subjects are great, but these priorities were dictated 124 years ago.
The old blue-collar industrial model of education is already gone. We're already living in its wake.
What happens to society when hundreds of millions of people have that aimless, rudderless feeling of, I've been replaced by a very small box? I don't know if there's a solution.
We all learn in different ways. This isn't the way to do it. This is the way that I did it.
If the assignment is you get it back and you crumple it up and throw it in the trash can, that's kind of one student experience. And if the assignment is to produce something that you're going to present to professionals in the field, that's completely changing the whole dynamic.
We are trying to have that type of perplexity and curiosity get inculcated in our students.
Saying your parents, all your friends' parents, and a bunch of people you don't know are going to be here to see the work you did. It creates an aspect of authenticity because we are creating something for an audience.
The things I think in life that give us some of the greatest satisfaction is making something that wasn't there before.
And I can't wait for that moment when it does work and I'm completely done with it. And it's like all leaves. It'll be one of the greatest moments in my life.
The kids have that feeling it's transformative for them. I made this, and everyone's coming to look at it.
So as we talk about a student's why, this film leads into the concept of exhibition nights or exhibition days, which I know some districts around the state are doing, but we will use that as a jumping in point for future webinar series that we're going to have. But the short trailer also talks about the idea that the daily schedule is archaic, not meeting the needs of what we're trying to teach and implement for 21st century learners. And then also, how do we make learning meaningful and authentic to students, allowing them to have flexibility, to be able to create, to be able to problem solve, to be able to demonstrate what they know and what are they going to do with it. So again, if you've not seen the video Most Likely to Succeed, that would be something I would highly recommend. And as if your district is looking to have greater impact in transformation, maybe something that you wish to show your school board or your community as well. I'm a little behind, so I'm just gonna run through these because I want to give Heather and Bo and Dustin plenty of time to share their incredible information with us. So one of our goals today is to review the Transformational Learning Grant. Remember, this was devised in order to meet the mandate of the 1972 Montana Constitution, talking about providing an appropriate and meaningful education to develop the full potential of all students. And I know Dustin talked about that as well in the chat session of being able to provide learning and quality learning for all of our students, regardless of what their goals are for themselves. And then transformational learning is defined as a flexible system, which we're going to talk about some flexibilities. Pupil-centered, when you look at the bill, it talks a lot about student choice, student agency, student needs, student culture, student passions and interests. So a pupil-centered learning, and then again for the full educational potential. For fiscal year 23, there will be 35 districts that are funded. You can see the demographics there up in the right-hand corner. This will be the last cycle for our first cohort, as there's a 4-year consecutive funding cycle that will jump off the funding table. So a lot more districts in fiscal year 24 will be funded, as more than $1.5 million will be opened up as this first cohort leaves. And I just really want to emphasize and stress the point that in order for districts to apply, that they must provide a board-approved definition of proficiency that does not require seat time. So as we talk about and look at some pillars of education, with flexibility of scheduling, flexibility of competency-based, and students being able to progress on their own time frame. Really important that as districts are funded for transformational learning, that they are not requiring seat time for their students who are part of their programs. Again, as I work with districts around the state, I hear, what are districts doing? So here is a vast list of what was reported from the annual reports for fiscal year 22 around our state. And as we look at some building blocks of future schools, you will see that this list here has strong implementation and connection between the list that I'm going to talk about briefly when it comes to how do we build that future school. The second grant that I manage is the Advanced Opportunity Grant. Again, review of this is to establish support for students in post-secondary successes, whether that be college, whether that be career, or it might be a trades route. From this funding, a minimum of 60% of the funding must go to reduce parent out-of-pocket costs, and a maximum of 40% is used to expand CTE courses. This funding is permanent, and it's based on the percentage of the district's prior year's quality educator payment, and requalification for funding is an annual report. There currently is a surplus of this funding, so if you have neighboring districts who might be interested in advanced opportunity funding, please help spread the word that there are funds available that have not been exhausted by the allocations of the legislators. And again, some advanced opportunities examples here. You can see dual enrollment courses, industry education partnerships and internships. And I know Bo is going to be talking about that and what they're doing out of Billings. Talking about credentialing and certifications and being able to have stackable credentials. I opened by sharing my professional journey, that I currently do not have a career that I ever thought I would have. But being able to have stackable credentials for students who might be interested in different things, and those interests change, but to still allow them to grow and be successful based on their prior experiences that we can offer in school are important. Again, that maximum of 40% of the expansion, personalization, and enhancement of CTE programs, and then career and technical organizations. Missoula is currently funded, and they provide a lot of these different career and technical organizations, as I know many schools around the state, but these programs could be funded through the Advanced Opportunities grants as well. So one last slide from me, and I'm going to turn it over to our experts here. But as I presented to the Ed Interim Committee earlier this February, there was great discussion and inquiry about what is truly being transformed, as the Transformational Learning Grant was to provide incentive for transformation and innovation within schools. And so as I am a part of a national cohort through the University of Kentucky, one of our book studies is by Scott McLeod, which is the resource for this. And he talks about in his book, these building blocks for future schools. So this framework is really what we will be looking to use to provide some professional development and workshops moving into the spring and into the summer. But it also, I think, really parallels what the legislative services researcher Tad McCracken talked about when he presented to the Ed Interim Committee as well, when they really questioned their $2+ million investment to innovation and transformation. Within his presentation, he talked about the personalization of learning for students. he talked about learning being rooted in relationships. And when we look at the language in the bill, relationships appear over and over again for being able to have success in the implementation of transformational learning, and understanding what students' needs, desires, passions are, and allowing them to have some flexibility and freedoms for pursuing those in our public school system. Pat talked about student agency, again, that idea of choice, whether it be choice of courses, but maybe even choice of curriculum, choice of how students want to demonstrate mastery, choice of projects. All of that student choice comes into play within these building blocks. He talks about unwalling education, and as Dustin talked about, the community partnerships, right? We know that students can and are learning outside of our school buildings. And I know that in Reed Point, Superintendent Jarrett has provided some community partnerships that hopefully she'll share with us as well. But how do we allow students to have those authentic learning experiences outside of our school walls? And the final pillar that Pat talked about was a competency-based approach, right? So that flexibility, using technology to allow students to demonstrate proficiency and then be able to move on at their own pace, instead of a one-size-fits-all learning scheduling where students are progressing all at the same pace, regardless of demonstration of mastery and competency. So hopefully there you have some interest in these 10 building blocks. And again, I am excited to share what I've learned about these, but excited more importantly to have conversations with you and your school district and staff about how can we work to implement some of these if you feel that the fit is beneficial for your school district. So now I would like to introduce our presenters today. First, we have Heather Jarrett, who's the superintendent at Reed Point School District. So Heather, I will turn it over to you, and I will make you a co-host if need be.
Thank you, Crystal. So first of all, I have to apologize in advance. I'm pretty passionate about this, and my mind kind of goes probably I don't know, 1,000 times a minute of different possibilities. So I do have notes that I provided for myself, but anyway, if you need to stop me, or if I talk too fast, or if I don't make any sense, please let me know. So first of all, I was asked to share our school's vision for transformational learning. And basically that's our ability to provide more opportunities for our students to personalize their learning with a personalized learning plan that will honor their individual interests, their passions, their strengths, their needs, and their culture. And that's huge. You know, that's a big lofty type goal, right? My district, I have 60 students K-12. And so sometimes I think people get stuck in, well, we're just too small to be able to do anything. And I think the opposite. We're just so small, we can do anything. And so that's really exciting. And that's kind of where I started with this. So, you know, one of the reasons why I was so excited to apply for this is because our student population is declining, just the way our community is. And so we really want to be a school that can offer kids more opportunities, and it's hard to do with less funding. So when there's an opportunity to have some additional funding where we can do that, that was definitely our motivation. So one of the things that we do, and I'll probably birdwalk a few times, and I apologize for that, but one of the things of how we got started with this is I was approached by a community member from a neighboring community a few years ago, and he said, you know, I really want to be able to provide an opportunity to a handful of kids I realize that might not have that opportunity, and that's automotive mechanics and different things that go along with that. Can your school help me do that? And I was like, well, you know, maybe. What do you think that looks like? And so we kind of went back and forth. This individual and his wife actually developed a program called Sweetgrass Technical Institute in a neighboring town in Big Timber, and weren't really getting a lot of traction, but there's a lot of value to that because there's a lot of kids out there that that's their passion. They're on ranches. They have interest in that. And so I said, okay, let's figure this out. And so we partnered. He comes in 2 days a week to our school currently. And he teaches automotive mechanics and welding, and the kids just love it. And so one of the things we wanted to be able to do was partner with him even more so that we could provide school to work opportunities. And so that is one thing that our transformational grant and our advanced opportunity grants have allowed us to do. We can now send kids to him. And so over the last 2 years, this is the first year that we've received funding, but over the last 2 years, we've been able to send kids over and they work with him in his shop, and it's a wonderful opportunity. And so that's been a great partnership, and it just kind of keeps building. And so, you know, we have to solve problems all the time of like, well, what's the best hour of the day? How can we schedule this? How do we get our kids there? All those how questions are the things that just drive me of how can we do education better. And so that's one of our major partnerships, and we're looking to expand that. You know, there's one business in Reed Point, and it's a sawmill. Not a great opportunity for kids because it's kind of dangerous. So we really have to branch out. And so that has been a wonderful partnership. And we keep looking to figure out how we can expand that. And then some of the other things, you know, we noticed our kids wanted to go to college, but they really didn't know what they wanted to go to college for. They weren't sure they were going to be successful. They weren't sure we were preparing them. And so one of the things I really wanted to do was be able to offer some dual enrollment courses for our students. So we've worked really hard over the last few years to, one, build our staff capacity so that they can do some concurrent enrollment, and then two, form partnerships with universities or colleges in our state that they can also provide that opportunity for kids. So this year, because of our funding opportunity, I've had 11 students in the fall semester alone earn 55 college credits. Huge. It has solidified for more than half of them, hey, this is something I, one, can do, and two, I'm excited about. I know I can handle that task now. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out in the future of, okay, I can do it. I've done it. I have a pathway built for myself, and now we're going to keep moving forward. One of the other things, and I think it's a great problem, but I think it's a problem nonetheless for our kids that we really have to help them solve, is I am interested in a lot of different things. How do I hone that? And how do I move forward with that? Again, it's those how questions. And so this kind of helps them go along that road of, okay, I can try a few different things. One of the other problems, I guess, that we had is we had students who were interested and wanted to learn more, but they didn't want to leave home. So we started offering some certification programs with Ag Nelson Academy. We can kind of plan their learning over time. That's been a great partnership. I've had one student so far complete a certification in vet technology. And so that's been great. So we keep just kind of building and building. One of the other things our elementary has started to do is Genius Hour projects. And so they dedicate time in their day and they get to explore different things. I've had a 5th and 6th grader this year kind of team up, and, you know, scrunchies are the big thing, but they had to learn how to sew. They had to learn how to market. They had to do some research of, do we need a business license to be able to sell these? And so the learning has just been huge for them, and it just keeps multiplying. And that excitement of I can do bigger things than just typical school has been really great. Some of the other things that we do, and now I take them for granted a little bit because we've been doing it and it's been great, is we do standards-based learning, grading, and reporting. So we're all proficiency based. One of my goals is to have at least 30% of our students who are going along at their own pace. So I think we have 35% of our students, K-12 right now, that are just progressing through their learning at their own pace. And so in most cases they're accelerated, which is great, but some of them are going a little bit slower, which is also great for them because we all learn a little bit differently. So that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. And hopefully, Crystal, I did justice to what you were hoping would transpire there.
Yeah, Heather, thank you so much. I'm with you. There's such a vast amount of information, a vast amount of opportunities. so many things that we can do, and like you shared at Reed Point, things that you are doing, with constantly looking at what else could we be doing, so I appreciate that. I appreciate your viewpoint on that, and then sharing those challenges as well. We know that as we dive into the unknown, that there are challenges and unanticipated things that arise. So I appreciate you sharing what's happened in your school district, and how you've worked to kind of fight through those weeds. So thank you for that. So Superintendent Gordon out of Fairfield, he is up next. I think he's going to share a little bit about some strategic planning, as I met with him last week over the phone, that's one piece of the puzzle that some people seems to be unknown for some districts and who might be interested in applying, but he also has some interesting viewpoints from what's going on in Fairfield. So Dustin, take it away.
Out of practice a little bit. I don't know if I have anything that's interesting, but I'm certainly willing to share what we have, and I'm certainly willing to probably admit that at the beginning of this whole thing, it was overwhelming. I wasn't sure where we were going or what our target was. We just knew that we wanted to be involved and get into this, and our direction now isn't probably what our direction was at the very beginning, and it's probably by making some mistakes. And I am going to let go of my ego and share some of those mistakes with you. As we got into applying for both grants and got in on the initial step of the grants, we kind of had this direction with our plan of being able to connect with our students who were becoming more and more disengaged with school. We're finding more students who are not interested in going to college. They're more interested in doing something hands-on right now. And we thought, well, let's provide some apprenticeship opportunities and things like that, thinking that we were going to target just that group of students. And we have found very quickly that it's not just the students who are a little bit disengaged with school as far as reading, writing, and arithmetic that we were appealing to. It was everybody. And we were overwhelmed with the number of students who wanted to find opportunity outside of the walls of our school, whether that be online or whether that be in the community apprenticeships. We were also, we had our semi-annual CTE advisory committee where we bring in some business people. I was kind of naive to the number of opportunities that we could provide our students in a small community like Fairfield. I kind of thought our opportunities were going to be limited. We were initially looking at things we could do in partnership with Great Falls. How are we going to let kids go to Great Falls and be safe and all of those things? And it was a lot easier than we thought. And we just needed to get going and start the conversation a little bit. And as we got going and started the conversation, our strategic plan started taking better hold. And let me just talk about that real quick. Heather talked about a lot of the same things that we're doing, and I think that everybody is doing. A lot of dual credit. We do a lot of dual credit. We do a lot of apprenticeship opportunities as well. As I sat down and started to do a strategic plan, I was looking at some of the strategic plans that were available out there, and some of them ranged from 1 page, some of them were 50 pages. So I took some time this summer to sit down and flip through them and built our own that's starts out with good objectives that go into more measurable opportunities. And if anybody needs something to look at other than the ones that are on OPI, I'm very willing to share mine. But we have objectives under 4 different goals that break down into measurable strategies as well. But I do want to say we made the mistake of thinking that we were going to help students that were disengaged in school, and it has blossomed into much more than that. We've got students that are doing electrician apprenticeships, lineman apprenticeships. They're at the seed plant. They're at the local medical center. We have students going to the nursing home. And one of the challenges that we had was, how are we going to give them credit for that? How are we going to give them credit? And as we started to develop our definition of proficiency and talked a lot to Heather Hoyer in Great Falls, it really wasn't nearly as hard as we thought it was going to be. And the legislature kind of made that easier, and the Office of Public Instruction made that a little bit easier. And the next step was, because we were so overwhelmed, one of the things that we're using our funding for is being a superintendent in a, what I dare say is a middle-sized school. Didn't have time to do all of it, so we hired a retired CTE instructor that formerly taught FCS for us. She's helping coordinate that. We're using some of our funding to pay her to help us do the coordination for this, so it's not dependent upon when I find nooks and crannies of time, or the principal, which has been very helpful. And then when we sat down in our last meeting, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, through the ag program, they have what's called AET for CTE, and can't see that with my background. I would just suggest anybody out there take a look at what's called AET for CTE. It's an ag-based platform where students in the ag world can put in where they're getting their experience time. It fits right into advanced opportunity learnings and apprenticeships, and it is, we're finding that as we just get into it, it is going to be a great platform for all of the documentation and tracking and information that you're going to have with students who are involved in your advanced opportunities and transformational learning stuff. So again, that's a lot of information that kind of built off what Heather said, and it kind of moved all over the page. Any questions? Absolutely. I just got in the text box, willing to share our strategic plan. I don't know what the best way to do that is. Crystal, you want me to send it to you and you send it out? You want me to screen share it and flip through it? What do you want to do?
Yeah, if you, do you have a link to it that you could post in the chat? Is it on like a Google Drive, or?
I have it in Word, but I could.
Yeah,
certainly.
if you send it out to me, I'm happy to send it to our participants.
Okay.
Yeah. Not a problem. Dustin, I appreciate you sharing the resources. I think that, as people start to build their own plan, and as plans change, the multitude of resources that we can gather is definitely beneficial. So I myself am going to look into that AE for CTE and see if I can learn more about that and share that with districts who are looking to serve those students in the ag communities, as we know that there's an abundance of them, especially here in the state of Montana. And then maybe some other time you and I can chat just to learn more about how that CTE community partnerships, how that came about, having those businesses within your local community come in and see what they can provide for students. And I think that that's a great stepping off point. I know Heather talked about that as well, being in Repo and only having one business or one industry, but how can we try to look in neighboring communities, do it safe to keep our kids safe, but also try to provide those opportunities that we may have never thought of. So thank you for that, Dustin, I appreciate it. Bo from Billings is with us. Thank you, Bo, for joining us. And he's going to, as Dustin said, a mid-sized school. Bo's going to show us the large size school and what Billings School District and their career outreach center is doing for their students. So Bo, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. So yeah, we're the largest school district in Montana. So this is something that has been hugely beneficial to us as far as advanced opportunities. It aligned with a lot of the work that we were already doing, but I think some schools are coming from and some communities are coming from different angles on what's I guess been done in this space. So I'll kind of try to cover it all. So when this funding became available, we pursued it. And there was kind of a two-pronged approach to it. Like number one, or I guess three, I kind of keep it in buckets. So the 40% CTE funding, that's hugely beneficial. It just supplements things that we were already trying to do. It allowed us to retool a lot of, we were trying to transition our shop class to more of a construction trades focus. So less on the craftsman, cabinets, counter, those types of things, cutting boards, and more towards, hey, how do we give these students foundational skills so that they could go out and get a construction job, an electric, work as an electrician, a plumber. And so that was the 40% is like a no-brainer. You get that funding and you get to use it, to supplement whatever CTE funding you already have. The 60% I'll cover a little bit. We kind of have a two-pronged approach to that. So we have a process that students can actually tell us what they want to spend money on. So we have a form that students, fill out. It's very much personalized learning in the sense that students are saying, hey, I want, I am wanting to be a pilot. Here's a way, I'm trying to pursue a pilot's license. Here's a pot of money that students can tell us, that they can access, that they tell us what they want to be, and we can try to facilitate that. So that's kind of one approach, and that's where it very much personalized learning. We also know that a lot of, not everyone knows what they want to do when they're 16, 17, and 18. So we're kind of also on that front, that 60% side, trying to work with our business community to figure out what opportunities are available with this funding over top of it, knowing that, hey, if we, I kind of call it the build it and then, attract the students to it. We're building opportunities with companies that, are looking to talk to the future workforce and let them know. And then we have this funding on the other side that we can help make some of those things happen. Like, for example, we have a class where students get to spend an entire semester with a couple different construction companies.
I'll take that other stuff, Anna.
Learning about, hey, these are the different careers in construction. Here's some skills, here's some certifications. The certifications, the equipment like steel-toed boots, the safety equipment, all of that is paid for out of advanced opportunity. We kind of worked with the company to advertise the opportunity. We attracted students to that opportunity, and then we used the advanced opportunity funding to fill in the gaps to make it so that basically any student that wants to participate can do that. We've lined up transportation. One student that we have participating in that program doesn't have a vehicle, doesn't have a driver's license. We're helping her get her driver's license. We're currently providing transportation using advanced opportunity funding. So it really is, I guess the way I think about it is, we're asking students what they want to do, and we're using this funding to facilitate it. And then we're also out in the community to, trying to ask businesses what opportunities are available, and then attracting students to that and using the funding on the back end to say, hey, this is, no matter what is required to do this, whether it's the cert, paying for the exam, paying for the certification, paying for the equipment it requires, we've got funding that can kind of back you up, and so that you're not out, anyone can participate regardless of your socioeconomic. We use dual credit, obviously, or dual enrollment. That's big for our college-bound students. We have a process that I'd be willing to share with you guys. We want to make sure that we're not spending it all on college-bound students. I think that, as a K-12 system, we do a pretty good job of preparing students for college and jumping through those hoops. But for some students that do want to pursue that funding and dual enrollment process is really beneficial, so that we get students that have the most need, the most help they can get to be successful along that route. So I'd be happy to share that. That's part of the 60% we use. All of our certifications, students don't pay any fees for the certifications they get in our classes or the exams that they have to take. So we have a CNA class, we have welding certifications, we have EMT, we have automotive certifications, all student costs that normally would fall on, hey, you got to write $100 check to take the CNA exam. We take care of that. We're also building new ones. So like in our medical pathway, we got a teacher certified to teach phlebotomy and offer that certification as a part of one of her classes. That's, we pay for the use the 40% to pay for her certification process to be able to give that cert. We pay for the students' cost of that. So now, all 15 students in that class, they get a phlebotomy certification, and it's at no cost to them. So that's, I guess, just a rambling way of like how we're using it in a lot of different buckets. We bring it all the way down. Like we use our K-8 to do more like career awareness stuff. So different events, the costs of, doing certain events, the costs of providing career awareness platforms for our students, to do assessments to figure out what careers they want to do. We kind of focus on that stuff at the K-8 level, and then use our high school stuff to, once we kind of get them interested in these classes and, know what certifications they can get in middle school, we then, we'll have more students hopefully trying to pursue that once they get to high school. And the last thing for I know a lot of districts, like this position is funded partially by the school district and partially by some of our business partners. And this was a process that started like 8 or 9 years ago. I think there's a lot of larger communities that are figuring out how does that work. One way I think would be a really good use of this money is similar to how Fairfield's using it. It's a part-time staff, it's a full-time staff, it's half paid by the school district, half paid by maybe your local chamber of commerce, or putting a person to do some of the coordinating, knowing that people within your school, like a superintendent or a principal, they've got enough things on their plate, and reaching out to businesses and finding placements is not necessarily something they could spend a ton of time on. Finding those partnerships where you say, hey, we're going to create a position that is X amount of hours a week. We'll use some of we'll put some funding up through advanced opportunities. We'll use, the chamber will put up some money to really start facilitating that. I think that's like a key starting ingredient, is that it really can't, unless you're a really small school, it's you got to kind of have someone who's dedicated to, this is what they really focused on. And that can work a lot of different ways, I think, depending on the size of your community and what's already going on. I know they don't necessarily have a career outreach director in, Bozeman, or they have an administrator that's doing it currently. I think communities like that, using some of this funding to put a person in charge of it, is a really good place to start. And then it's honestly amazing how much you can ask the community to do once you start, once they start getting students in and they have certifications that they want, and they really start seeing that younger generation, coming into their workforce potentially, or, getting interested in their industry. You can figure out, like, they'll put money up to fund the position long term, and so that you can focus your advanced opportunity funding on other things later. So instead of paying for the position for the next, in perpetuity, you can go to that business community and say, hey, we really want to use this funding that the school's getting to do some of these other initiatives. Would you be willing to put in $1,000 a year? Find 20 businesses that are willing to do that. I think it really, you'd be amazed at once they start seeing a return on, students being interested in the things that they're doing, they really will come to the table and start putting their own money up to help continue that. And then it frees up your funding to grow your advanced opportunity, all the opportunities, because you now have, money that used to be spending on personnel, using it on other things. So is there anything I missed, Crystal, as far as I was trying to maybe try to find advice in here, as well as, hey, these are the things we use it for, but trying to find, hey, what nuggets can other schools take that you could maybe use?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. I appreciate your talk from the K-8 spectrum, because I know a lot of districts are like, well, this is easy for Montana, or for high school, like how to fund them. But how do we use this to support our elementary kids? And remember, Montana Advanced Opportunities is a 6th through 12th grade grant. So we're really looking 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And Bo, I believe you guys use Zello. Is that correct? Is that career?
Yeah, we use Zello. There's Naviance, there's MCIS. Like, I think that's I guess any advice, whether it's you're using the free version of MCIS or you're paying for something. I know some school districts do pay as well. It's kind of your foundation that you base a lot of things in. So we use it all through 6 through 12. It's kind of the foundation of career stuff, is that we're making sure we're mining that career interest. We're making them aware of it. We're doing different things with our funding to make sure that we're hitting, you can have great opportunities at the very end that you develop for students, but if you're not doing that work at the lower levels to give them, what is an electrician, and how, have I ever encountered that, so that when I say, hey, here's an opportunity to become an electrician, a student, it's kind of it connects the dots for them. I think that it's really kind of your foundation of where you operate your career stuff out of, is using those tools to mine the awareness so that then students can tell you what they want to, you're telling them what's available and then they get to pick what they want to do. Our saying is we want our students to be able to choose the life that they have, not having life choose them as far as what they do for a career. That's kind of our motto, and that's how it kind of all ties into that a vision, I think.
So I appreciate that, that use of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade funding source as well. And then also a reminder that Montana Advanced Opportunity Funding is continuous. So unlike transformational learning that has a 4-year funding cycle, as long as it continues to be allocated through legislation, that this funding would be permanent every year moving forward. So just knowing that once districts apply, there's a current surplus that they would anticipate receiving that funding every year moving forward. So I think those are 2 highlights. Being mindful of time, my goal is to try to be done at 11. So I'll wrap up here in the next 2 minutes. I've put a link to the Google Doc that the slideshow that I've used, the slide deck. So you can access that at your own time. But I also want to be a little more aware of providing resources. So I've got a page here of resources as we come to a close today. The first one, what schools could be, there is a online.
I need to get to the Google. Oh, here we go.
An online collaborative group. There's actually a Montana group that I am a part of, along with some Alberton folks. I'm not sure who else is in there, but Big Sky Change is a group solely for Montana inside of that What School Could Be. So if you are not a part of the What School Could Be Academy and community, I would encourage, that is hyperlink there for you to be able to sign up for that. Tons of great resources. There's actually a presentation tonight at 6 o'clock that I plan on being a part of. And I think it's hosted by Micah Clarkson, who is the principal out of Alberton. The Rora Institute, again, if you're looking for how do we transform learning, how do we personalize learning, how do we integrate intentionally those 21st century skills into our students' everyday experience, the Rora Institute has a wealth of information. Portrait of a Graduate, I've spent some time out in Alberton. They're looking to move toward this Portrait of a Graduate. And again, focusing on what are those skills and competencies we want our students to have upon graduation, instead of what are the standards that they've mastered. So being able to share that shift. And then for those of you who are podcast folks, Reimagine Schools, they have a bunch of series. Justin Bathon, professor out of the University of Kentucky who leads our cohort, is on there a couple times, and just tons of different topics, from Portrait of a Graduate to standards-based grading to project-based learning, and the list goes on and on. So there are 4 resources for you. And then the book that I had mentioned earlier with those building blocks of future schools, I came out of the book Leadership for Deeper Learning by, forget their first names, but I think it's Scott Richardson, Justin Bathon, and then Scott McLeod. And so there are some resources for you. Links that I have, the OPI Transformational Learning and Montana Advanced Opportunities websites, as we're posting new information on their districts who've already been funded. Their annual reports are on there, strategic reports are on there. As you look to guide your own learning and your district's journey, there are some beneficial documents that you should be able to find on there. Again, the link to our slide deck today. I will be hosting roundtables in April and May, in person 3-hour roundtables. My locations will be Great Falls, Belgrade, Billings, Kalispell, and East Helena. So if you are in close proximity to any of those locations and would like to attend, there is a link to the flyer for our roundtables. And again, there's my personal contact information. So appreciate your time and contributions today. Dustin and Bo and Heather, I sure appreciate you sharing your district's journeys with us, and just kind of helping you paint the picture of what's possible through this funding, but even more important, what's possible for our students as we try to prepare for them a world that's ever changing. And I used to have a principal say, we're preparing for jobs that haven't even been created. So knowing that, what competencies and skills are we teaching them versus what multiple choice test are we accessing and asking them to complete. So having said that, I appreciate all of our folks who participated today. I will stay on to be able to answer any questions that you may have. And then this webinar will be posted to the OPI website for future reference if need be. Next Wednesday webinar is April 27th at 10 o'clock. So hope to see some familiar faces back then and bring along a friend if you feel so inclined. So have a great Wednesday and take care.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.